video, I will be trying to paint Renaissance paintings without actually knowing what Renaissance paintings look like. Now, I of course have seen them before, but I don't actually quite remember what the style looks like, so I'll be trying to replicate the style from memory. Now, I will be looking at pieces afterwards, and I will be attempting to actually redo them so that I can actually get the Renaissance style down. If you enjoy this video, I will do another one of these or another type of these, and if this gets, let's say 15 likes. I didn't even reach 10 in the last video, but I'll probably do it again anyway, just for fun. But if you enjoyed the video, I really appreciate if you like and subscribe. Thank you. Let's get on to the video. Went for more of a geometric style. I don't remember who I had in mind, but I do think there is a Renaissance painter that does use more geometric shapes. I'm pretty happy with this one overall, but I don't think I do Renaissance quite justice here. As with the hair, I don't honestly remember how Renaissance hair looks. I do remember looking pretty basic. I do think, once again, even though I went for the more geometric style, I think I overdid the detail in this, because I do believe I did the same issue as I was before. Now, I do want to make sure that in my last piece, I try and do Renaissance as much justice as possible. Now, overall, I went for a newer look as I did with the last one. If you guys know who had the more geometric art style, please let me know. I would actually really appreciate it, so I can look at some of their work and see maybe if I did at least their work more justice. Now, as you can see here, I'm give it more of a black background. It actually kind of helps sometimes to help see if I make any mistakes. I don't know why. It might not help you particularly, but it's just something I notice. Sometimes it helps to give the thing a black background, and it helps me see the mistakes more. Now, something that you probably won't see me do in this particular piece that actually helps is flipping the canvas. You'll actually see a lot of YouTubers do this, and I'll actually mention it a lot. But flipping the canvas is actually something very helpful to do. Anyways, now in this piece, now I start doing the clothes. I add these highlights. I do think they look very good. I think the clothes are actually simple enough for the Renaissance art style, though I do think I could have made it look, the lines look cleaner, and I think that would have contributed to that Renaissance look. Now, moving on to the hair, and as you can see, I do really like the shape of the hair, but I don't know if possibly it doesn't quite fit the Renaissance style. Another thing you'll notice in this painting that I will do is that I do add the eyebrows, but I do think that I did add too much detail, and as women back in that time, their eyebrows were particularly small, and they did not have very thick eyebrows, which would lead to, I guess it's not thick eyebrows, which in this piece, I kind of forgot to honor. You kind of learn how much the culture was different back in this day than it was and back right now. It's actually pretty interesting to think about, but yeah, I don't think I do the hair quite justice here, as I add a little bit too much, a little bit too weird shapes, and I think that it looks more of almost like a weird mash between like the anime highlights and also kind of a weird mixture of realism in there. I do think I could have done this piece a little more justice when it came to the hair. Typically in Renaissance, I do think you see a little less style in the hair. You see a little more, the hair usually looks a little more simplified, if I remember correctly. Now overall, I'm pretty happy with this piece. I do think it does look really cool regardless of whether or not it fits the Renaissance art style. I'm pretty happy with it, and I would actually recommend doing something quite similar to this if you haven't tried it already. Now, I'm hoping that in the last piece I can kind of get the things that I do right in this piece and kind of transfer them over while also learning from mistakes. I will be looking in the last piece, I'll be looking at like the paintings that in the popular Renaissance age that will help me kind of know what to base my style off of for the last piece. Of course, there are different art style like during all the periods of history, so I do want to gather more similar ones so that I don't actually confuse and actually mess up my art style. But yeah, I hope that you like this piece. If you don't, let me know what I did wrong in the comments. I can think of a few things right now, um, namely the hair and the little bit of the sloppiness in the detail of the clothes. Um, if you enjoyed this particular segment, I would actually really appreciate your input in the comments. Thank you. On to the next one. The Renaissance style is not overall super photorealistic. Well, it may be photorealistic. I don't think that it has to be overly. So I don't put as much detail in the hands as I should. I kind of just let them go as they are. Now, I was kind of conflicted whether or not I wanted to give them that old fleshed out look where I make it look aged by adding on all the yellow as like the old paintings like the Mona Lisa do and stuff and all that. Now, I ended up trying to go for a younger look, and I do think that is probably the best. But maybe in the last piece I will end up doing it. I don't add overall too much detail to the hands, as I do think that it clashes with the style of Renaissance. But as for the rest of it, I do try and give it that look. Now, I'm not quite familiar with Renaissance paintings as a painter and as a digital artist. I know them a little bit, but I've never really stared at the Mona Lisa for more than 5 seconds, so I'm not quite sure exactly what they look like, but I do think they do add a decent amount of detail. I know it isn't quite photorealistic, and if memory serves me correct, I do believe it is maybe a bit too subtle, but I don't quite remember. I do think in hindsight, I do think I am being a bit high on the shadows, but I do think that is pretty fine. It shouldn't make that big of a difference, depending on how far off I am. I'm not quite sure. We'll see, but this looks quite fine to me. I don't think it's overly out of the Renaissance era, but I want to make sure that every detail is clearly supposed, so you don't have to imagine much. That's kind of like the style that I do for my Renaissance style paintings. But yeah, I do think I am doing pretty decent with the skin. I don't think it's over realistic, and I don't think it's under realistic either. Though I do think I went too bold for the Renaissance style, though I like it for a whole separate thing. I think it does fit good in some category. I like to start off with the I like to not do the eyes first. I prefer to do the eye everything around the eyes, as it makes it easier to kind of tell the shape of the eye, and it overall just helps you make it look better. Now, as for the lips, I kind of wanted to give them a more shiny look, a more also kind of a bit matte in the upper one as it looks. I do think that I did quite a good job emphasizing that. Now, if memory serves me correct, the women back in that time didn't wear lipstick, so it probably is not a great idea to give her lipstick, but yeah, whatever. Who needs history lessons? But I do think that the apple is under realistic. I don't think it quite fits the design quite well. I think I might go over it in a second, but I'm not quite sure. I do think I could have gone over it a lot better and added a lot more detail. I do think maybe in hindsight I should have done that. And I might do that in the last one, where I try to give everything as much of the same design as possible. Though I don't think it'll destroy the piece, it will probably make the piece look a lot better and give it that design that I was looking for. Now, I really do want to try and implement the black background, as I do think it is a very cool one. and I believe it is in the girl with the pearl earring. I don't know if there's any other Renaissance paintings that have that black background. That, and also I'm too lazy to think of a background myself, so I'm just gonna be lazy and give it a kind of a darkish brown. I also give it that Renaissance color. I don't want to make it pitch black. I don't think it quite fits. Now, with the garment, I do think I do it quite well. I don't want to add too much detail, but you want to help elaborate on the shape to kind of give it that definition that allows you to kind of tell what's going on, and that insists on the viewer so they don't have to leave too much of it upon their imagination. I do think that overall I'm pretty happy with the piece, and I do think that it does look very good, but I don't know right now if it is quite Renaissance. I do think I could have done better, and I hope that next time I will do better. But the shading looks quite decent for the style, but I don't think it quite fits Renaissance. I think I need to be more subtle, but also give it more of that realistic shaping. Now, I do think here I added on a multiply layer because I wasn't quite happy with the design. Now, I think overall this is a good design choice to add the multiply layer, but I don't think it quite fits for Renaissance paintings. So perhaps in the future I will take that in account and actually prepare and know about Renaissance paintings before I try and start drawing them. Well, on to the next one. Now, this is one of the most popular pieces in Renaissance paintings. Now we can see here they do actually emphasize a lot of detail, but they do it simplistic enough to where it isn't overly detailed or photorealistic, but it looks very good. The shading is done incredibly well as the highlights, they understand it very well, and it's a great painting. Now, as for the perspective of the shoulder, it does look a little bit weird, as with this area over here. Hold on, this area right here, it is a bit confusing for me. It does, you get the point across that you want to get across, but it could have been done better in my opinion, though of course I am not a professional artist yet. This painting is done incredibly well, and they really emphasize the detail in the eyes and the lips. It looks absolutely fantastic, and I definitely could not do better. But overall, I really like this piece. Even the black background to me is just so chic, and it's very nicely done. I'd like to implement it in one of my pieces. I really like how well this piece is composed, and I think that I could have much to learn from it, down to even the details on the eyes. It's very simple, and they complement everything you want to do. You can even see that there is a little bit of reflection from the highlights on her clothes that reflects back onto her face, as you can see. Now we'll see the same thing in the next painting I'm about to show you. There's a few things I want to go over first. As you can see, the eye, the way it curves in, as I have stated it in the past, they really emphasize the way that the face moves in these places. Now, it's very useful to use yourself as a reference or others, but you can actually see in real life how your face distorts depending on what angle you're looking at it from. And it's actually incredibly cool, and I would actually recommend it. It's one of the reasons why self-portraits can actually be very valuable to your art pieces, as well as actually painting real life subjects, or just things and angles that are hard for you to actually draw. Now on to the next piece. The Mona Lisa, it's a piece that everybody knows very well. It's arguably the most famous painting in history. I would say it fits the Renaissance style very well, down to the dot. The details on this piece are actually extravagant. While they don't overuse everything, they don't overuse the shadow. Now, I find myself typically underusing or overusing shadow, but as for the last piece, it's the very same concept where they don't overdo anything more than they need to. while emphasizing the realism of the face and the shadows and the way that the face distorts and bends. We can see the way her cheeks wrap around her face, and we can see the highlights and the shadows and the areas. It makes it look very realistic, and I literally could not do better. This is absolutely fantastic. To me, my favorite part of the painting are the hands. I think that they are captured very well, though they are not the centerpiece of the painting, as the Mona Lisa herself. Look at the arms. Look at how much detail themselves they had. The hands look practically real, and the sleeves look incredibly skillful. The absolute artistic mastery that was in this piece is undescribable, and I myself could only wish to ever be half as good as this. But it's incredibly great, and yeah, I want to try and emphasize some of this in my pieces now. Of course, in my last pieces that I showed, they weren't really all that great in that same way. They weren't all that subtlety, whilst actually increasing the actual realism of the piece. I do think I could have done that better, and that is why in my final piece I will be attempting to make it look more subtle while also giving over the details that are necessary. Kind of like how the girl with the black pearl and the Mona Lisa do. Now, onto the final piece. Now, in this particular drawing, I spent a lot of time trying to make sure that it was evenly blended. I want to make sure it looked as much like the Mona Lisa as possible in regards to the shading and the coloring. Now, I decided to go for more of an aged look, and I decided to distort some of the facial details to make her look more like a Victorian woman in my eyes and in my standards. I think I did a very good job in that aspect, but in the way that I make it look aged, I don't think I quite do the Victorian age justice, due to the fact that I actually was kind of rushing this piece, as I didn't have a lot of time um, in the middle of making this, and I didn't want to have to prolong the video because I've been making this video for a while. But yeah, I'm not quite happy with it, and I think I learned the reason why Victorian age paintings are the way they look the way they do, is because they look different on the painting and on the canvas rather than they do on digital. On digital, you really cannot emphasize that look, which really gives the Renaissance age that special charm that modern age art usually doesn't have. And I gotta say, I really appreciate it a lot more now attempting to recreate it digitally. Now, it was very hard to try and emphasize the features to make it look more like a Victorian age painting, and I feel like I started off with a better basis in the beginning, but once I started getting to the nose, I noticed I start messing up a lot more, and it starts to look less like a Victorian age painting and more like some weird I don't know, it just doesn't quite fit the Victorian age style, and I'm actually really disappointed in with what happened to the piece. I definitely think that I learned a lot from this piece in regards to the way that the certain way that the face molds around it, and I think that the yellowish color palette that the Mona Lisa uses, due to the aging, of course, it's not how it looked like in the beginning, but I did want to try and give it that aged Victorian look. I do think I made a mistake there. I think I would have been better had I gone for a more restored look, and I think if I ever do this again, it was probably a better idea to go for a more restored look. Anyway, I do think that working with the yellowish color palette with a little bit of orange undertone, I do think that gave a lot more challenge to the painting, as I've never experienced trying to paint with such a strange skin tone before. As well with the it's just hard to shade with this particular color palette, for me at least. I've never really stylized any painting in this particular point before. Now, in this stage, I'm pretty okay with what's happening. I'm not super upset with it. I do think that one of the things I am more upset with is the way that the hair doesn't quite fit in with the style I was going for. I don't think it quite fits in with the Victorian age. I do think I could have drawn the hair a lot better if I had put more effort and time into it. Now here I add on a multiply layer to try and give it more of that orangish color, to actually try and flush out the skin a little more, give it more of a little bit life. As you see in the Mona Lisa, she does have a bit of orange around the midsection of the face. And I tried and fix the nose here, as the nose lines in the Mona Lisa are actually done incredibly well. They are very sharp, they are distinct, so you can make out the nose very well, whilst in my piece, the nose is probably the weakest point in there. Now, I don't spend a whole lot of time on the clothes, as I felt it wasn't as important as an aspect as the face, and I also felt as if that the style I was going for in the clothing was a bit hard to draw, so I just tried to emphasize a little bit as the Victorian style as I could. Try to emphasize the Renaissance type clothing style, but I think I did quite a bad job in that regard. Now, if you were ever to try and draw Renaissance drawings in more of a digital space, I do recommend actually trying to make it look like more renewed, and I recommend you to take what I said with a grain of salt. I've never really tried painting like this before, and I'm sure you can probably find videos of people who know more about this type of style and more about the aged Victorian look on digital that can help you kind of give more of that style. But I'm not really experienced in this. If you want me to try again and attempt to make a better progress, an attempt to make more of a Victorian age style, maybe even on canvas, I would definitely be willing to give it a try. I would appreciate your input in the comments, but that's really it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe. Hope you have a good rest of your day. Later.